I think we did a little bit. Hello there, YouTube. Jason here. I've got Chad on the line. What's up, Chad?
Hello, how are you?
After some technical difficulties over the last night or so, we have finally come together. Yeah. We are here. We're ready to talk about our favorite toy lines of the 80s. And this is Chad's brainchild. He came to me about that, and I was like, dude, get me out of 1988 for a little bit.
Yeah,
Let's do the whole decade. Let's do the whole decade.
Yeah, so, no, it's a good topic. It's so vast.
Yeah, we're gonna have fun tonight. And I'm glad if you're watching us on YouTube. I'm glad because I got a bunch of stuff around me. I'm gonna be waving at the camera as we're going through these. Some from my leftover from my childhood, and some that I've collected just more recently over the last few years. But I'm so excited, man. I got so much cool stuff around me. I'm like, oh,
I can't wait. I'm the same way. I'm feeling like I'm gonna get distracted somehow and just start playing with everything on camera.
Oh, what did you say? Oh, sorry,
yeah, great.
I was taking care of Skeletor here.
Yeah, great podcast.
All right. I think I might actually piss off some people too for not including some things, but okay, we'll find out. But anyway, yeah, sure. Thanks everybody for watching, and we're gonna start the podcast portion of the show here, and we'll go through. We'll give our top 5, some honorable mentions, and I got a couple little questions in there, Chad. I'm going to ask you before we get into our lists, kind of around how we collect and so forth.
I like it.
Okay,
sounds good.
So. All right, here we go. Hello, and welcome back to the Rediscover the 80s podcast and another episode of Rank 'em, the show that counts down your favorites from the 1980s. I am your host, Jason Gross, and I'm proud to welcome back to the podcast a guest who I usually bring in to talk about movies, but we get to hear him chat about something else for once. He is Chad E. Young of the Horror Movie Barbecue. Hello, Chad.
Well, hello. Oh, wait, no, that's Corey Chapman. Sorry. Hello, how are you, Jason?
I'm doing fine, brother. How you been?
I have been doing pretty good. Can't complain.
That's
Even though
great.
This video is making my double chins look huge, that's okay. I'm doing okay, though.
we can compare if we want to for a little bit here.
Sure.
Our if you're listening to the podcast, I think you're going to want to go over to YouTube, not just for the double chin action, but we're going to have some fun stuff tonight. Chad actually approached me. Yeah, we did actually. Chad reached out about the topic for tonight's episode, which is our favorite toy lines of the 1980s. Yes. And I did throw out to Chad, since he is a little bit younger than me, that maybe we need to add in the early 90s to see if that would encompass everything that you kind of grew up with. But
right,
this is going to be fun. I'm glad we're getting out of the 1988 for a little bit and doing the whole decade. So we've got a lot really to talk about tonight, and
this
is going to be fun.
Spread our wings.
Exactly. That's what I love doing. Spreading the 80s wings.
Yes.
So as always with these Rank 'em shows, I like to kind of announce the disclaimer that these are going to be our personal favorites. They're not based on any kind of popularity or sales or commercial success, but more of what connected with us personally as kids and even as adult looking collectors.
Somewhat mature adults, I think. Our wives will probably argue.
So we're going to give you our top 5 and then some honorable mentions tonight before we wrap the show. But I usually like to give us some context when we're talking about a specific year. But instead of doing that, I wanted to throw out a question to Chad here and mainly ask, what kind of toy collector were you as a kid? Did you try to collect everything in a certain franchise or toy line? Or did you have a hodgepodge of a couple figures from here, a couple figures from there?
I was never a completist as a kid. So if it came to Batman or G.I. Joe or He-Man. I just wanted my favorites. So like, if there was a character I liked from the cartoon, if there was, those are the characters I would want. I would never really go for all of the characters. Like, and here's a good example, and we'll eventually touch on it. Spoilers. If I was collecting G.I. Joe and I just wanted like one trooper, whereas like a lot of people wanted like 47 alley vipers, Joe Zakari, and 400 televipers. I was never really that way. All I needed was really one, and I was satisfied. So honestly, I had a hodgepodge of lines, and I had a hodgepodge of those lines.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was kind of the same way. I never really tried to complete a whole set or series, that came out, a wave as a kid. And a lot of what I had too was more or less, what my parents or what my friends went to get at the store for my birthday or Christmas or whatever. And I never really was like specific about, oh, I want Cobra Commander or I want Destro.
Right.
I want G.I. Joe, whatever you want to give me. So that's how I've got some of these kind of oddball figures that I have connected with over the years. And it was like, like you said, several from different lines. I had Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, G.I. Joe, Transformers, GoBots, Mask. I mean, there was a lot that I had, and they all kind of played in the same universe.
Yeah, exactly.
I never kind of kept them separate. I don't have it with me, but I do have the die-cast Voltron. So he would kind of swoop in and just like, wreak havoc on G.I. Joe figures and such, as a kid. So that was my kind of experience as well. Now, was there a certain size figure that you liked? Did you like the 3 3/4 G.I. Joe Star Wars? Or did you like the bigger ones like Thundercats that were more like 6-inch?
I preferred the G.I. Joes, but honestly, and again, we've talked about, I'm a few years younger than you. So like once, the superhero figures like the X-Men, the Batman, those started becoming more of my preference. Anything I could just like carry in a bag and take outside and just get dirty as hell, those were kind of my favorites. So yeah, I would say the G.I. Joe 3 3/4, the He-Man, 4 to 5 inches. I think they're only like 4 inches, but those were always, if I could just all of a sudden grab them, run into the living room, like I said, take them outside. If it was like a snowy day and I wanted to do stuff like that, if I had easy access to them, the more I would probably enjoy them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was all over the board too with like the sizes. Because like I said, I had some Thundercats that were towering above like little Matt Tracker Master, those weren't even 3 3/4. Those were smaller.
Yeah, those were like an inch or something, weren't they?
Well, I'll show you the scale here in a little while. Sure. But, all right. So another question for you: how many of your childhood toys have you been able to retain? Did your parents like get rid of a bunch? Was there some that kind of snuck through that time,
It's not even if whether or not my mom, gave stuff away. It's more or less that when I started in middle school, I kind of started the, buying and selling and trading kind of stuff. And I started, that was about 95, 96. So I kind of, I kind of traded away a lot, but I managed to save, I'd say off the top of my head, about, I'd say I've got like 6 action figures that I can think of off the top of my head from my childhood. Now, when you say childhood, when do you consider that kind of the cutoff? Because
good question, because
Yeah, exactly.
I'm still looking for stuff in the thrift stores nowadays. But
Oh,
I just
aren't we
mean,
all?
if it was given to you or you went out and bought it as a kid, how much of that essentially, were you able to? Do you still own?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I've gone out too, and bought some vintage stuff, and I've got a few that I've been able to keep somehow through the years, and it's funny because I've got 3 kids, and I've introduced them to several different things over the years that I still have, and it's funny to just kind of walk back the hallway one day and trip over a GoBot Rock Lord sitting in the middle of the hallway. And you're like, how in the world am I still tripping over this 35 years since I had it,
Sure.
So
yeah.
anyway, that's kind of a surreal moment I have every once in a while. How am I stepping on a Matt Tracker figure, anyway.
Did you call up your mom and just be like, look, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I really am.
Well, she actually, if I'm going to answer that question, when I was at college, she gave a lot of my figures, mainly figures, to a family who was friends of ours, and they were needy. They weren't rich by any means.
Sure.
So, but it was a little above and beyond what I would have donated myself. So I lost my Castle Grayskull, and I lost my Boulder Hill playset from Mask. I lost a lot of the playsets too, and I was like, "No, Mom." So anyway, but I've got a few figures here and there, some Hot Wheels. I got one major thing that I'll show you guys here in a minute that have managed to preserve.
Oh, that I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's awesome.
One more question, and we'll get into our list. So
Please.
we're both collectors now. Do you mainly try to go out and get vintage stuff, or do you like to go collect new merchandise based on the 80s properties? What do you kind of lean towards, or do you do both?
That's kind of a tricky question. I mean, obviously, I prefer the older toys because they're a little bit more. I don't want to say they're more showpiece because I think toys now are definitely more advanced and kind of showy. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Jason has a. Is that a Sonic the Hedgehog ringtone?
That's my text message. Sorry about that. Yes.
Okay. No, that's okay. But honestly,
I was going to say, if you want to call me real quick, you'll hear the I think it's the Green Hill Zone.
The Green Hill Zone? Are you being serious?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yes, dude.
Hold on. I want to hear this. Oh, it's not ringing.
Why is my phone not ringing? I've silenced it.
Oh no!
All right, go for it.
Okay, never mind. Yeah, that's okay. Never mind. Anyway, I kind of prefer the older stuff just because that's the stuff I grew up with. However, I do love the new stuff that's always coming out, like that real Ghostbusters toy line that's coming out from Diamond. Whew, holy cow! Those sculpts are just the sculpts and colors are perfect. If there's a throwback wrestling figure that I really, really, really want, I'll get one. Like I have a Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth on my shelf with a bunch of the older ones. I mean, there are certain ones that I love. There's certain ones that I see and I'm just like, oh, okay, those are nice, but it's kind of I'll kind of go vintage more than I will modern stuff. But man, the modern stuff. I will say this: I do collect more the Funko Pops. I do collect more of the 80s and 90s kind of things than I do modern TV shows.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, there's been only one toy line that we'll get to that I've collected a lot of the vintage stuff just because it's so freaking, it's so expensive, man. It's just so freaking expensive to go back and to collect really anything at this point that's vintage.
Yeah.
Unless you're at a, unless you get lucky at a thrift shop or a yard sale or something,
I have a fun story about the thrift store when we get to a certain line, by the way.
Cool. So I do like to get some new stuff, and I'll get a pop here and there. And I did go out and get like, for instance, the 6-inch Ghostbusters figures that came out like I don't know, was it 2 years ago?
Oh, when the movie came out? Yeah.
I had to get me a set of those. So I will go out and get some newer figures, based on the 80s and stuff. But
sure.
All right. Well, I think we've teased enough.
Yes.
And
oh, see, now it's going.
There you go. Yeah. See, so that's my ringtone. So,
anyway, by the way, can I ask you a question real quick? Why is it not Super Mario? Is there like significant meaning behind that?
I've always been more of a Sega guy.
Okay,
I got a Sega Master System before I got a Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I got a Sega Genesis rather than getting a Super Nintendo. So I don't know. I've always been the Genesis and Sega person.
Oh, I can totally appreciate that. Sure.
All right, let's do it. What's your number 5 choice for the top toy lines of the 80s and maybe early 90s?
Okay, so this one actually it does go into the early 90s. This one is, believe it or not, one that I didn't really get a lot into back in the day. This is a toy line that I had maybe, 1 or 2 things. I preferred the cartoon over the actual toys, but knowing me, I should have had like every single thing released. And it is Filmation Ghostbusters. I'm kidding. It's the real Ghostbusters. I am a big fan of the Filmation Ghostbusters, but we'll get to that some other time. And I just dropped everything. So I gotta be honest. I loved the cartoon to the point that I actually saw the cartoon first before I actually saw the first movie. I don't think I saw the first movie until I was like maybe probably 10 or something. It was later in life, but so the second movie came out, and that's my favorite of those two, and I've gotten a lot of flack for that. Again, Corey, I know you're listening.
You'll get none from me.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love it because it's so real Ghostbusters inspired. But these toys, I believe, were they started to get released in '86, I think. So it was a little short. It was right around the time, obviously, the cartoon came out. The thing about these is, with the exception of maybe the first line, they don't really stick to much that was in the cartoon. They kind of just do generic stuff to the point that I'm going to show it off. One of my favorites in the line was, of course, the toilet, Fearsome Flush. Which,
nice.
If you think about it, we got a demonic toilet in this line, which just proves just how insane A, Kenner was, B, how high someone was for, obviously someone was high for pitching a demonic toilet, but not as high as the people who approved it. But Ghostbusters is such an insane line. The vehicles, the toys, the accessories. I mean, the little slime. Who didn't love slime as a kid? But the granny. I don't know how well you can see it, but like the granny goodness.
Yes.
The granny ghost, I think, is her official name. They did all these amazing, figures and the accessories and toys. I mean, it was just incredible. I don't know why I wasn't as into it as I should have been, but I've been going back and collecting these, over the past few years, to the point that I've ended up with about 4 Ecto-1s over the years.
You've got the firehouse, don't you?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to show this off. Okay, let's see if I can get it in frame. I don't know how well I'm doing. No. Oh, geez. Yeah, here it is.
I see the
see
ecto
kind
cooler
of.
trap. Oh, there it is. Yeah, there we go. Yep.
Yep. So actually, the containment trap was a gift from our buddy Sean Robert. That's actually one of the ecto cooler promos that was sent out. Because I didn't get one. Just saying, Coca-Cola. It's not like I've never talked about it before. But
I got one.
Yeah, I know you got one. Of course, you got one. So but I got to tell you a story about that Ghostbuster house, and then I want to hear your thoughts on the Ghostbuster line.
Sure.
So it was hold on, let me take a big. Oh, this is looking great for those watching on YouTube. So I actually got that at a thrift store. It was the weekend my mom came up. It was about a week or two after Lori and I moved to an apartment, and we were literally right down the road from a thrift store. And my mom and I are just looking around, looking for stuff to do, and she's like, oh, I think we were like waiting on our lunch or something, so we decided to go to the thrift store. When I walk in, I see that standing, and it's like wrapped in plastic. I don't know why it's wrapped in plastic, but I start assuming, oh, like maybe it's got a figure or two. And they have it behind the counter with a bunch of other stuff. Like there was a Extreme Ghostbusters backpack in the box, or it was loose in the box, and there was a Jurassic World toy in the box. The Jurassic World command center that I ended up picking up, they were trying to sell it for, I think it said 120 on the box, but the woman looked at it and said, no way that's 120, that's got to be a 40. So I picked that up. I picked the Extreme Ghostbuster thing up. I also got this. Now, the reason I'm telling you the number for the Jurassic World is because it was half price day.
Oh man.
So I look at I'm buying this Ghostbusters house no matter if the pieces are there. I don't care what's there. I don't care what the price is. It's $6, or I'm sorry, it's $12 for the Ghostbusters house. And it's half price day, so it's $6.
Holy cow, dude.
I'm looking in it, and there's really no figures in there. That's fine. I don't need, I wanted the house. I'm looking in it. All of a sudden, it's got all the paperwork. It's got the instructions. It's got the Kenner insert, and it's got a little poster featuring the toys that were released up until that point. And it's got all the pieces, 100% complete, except the slime can, which I picked up eventually, and it's just missing the box. That's literally all that's missing.
$6.
Perfect condition. $6. I'm never going to see that again. And every once in a while, yeah, that's one of the few things. That's one of the things I said. Actually, I try not to say God's name in vain too much, but that may have slipped out. And every once in a while, I go through these things, and I'm always like, do I need to keep this and that? And me and my wife will go through the room, and I'll even say to myself, does someone else want to enjoy this? And she's like, don't you ever sell that, because you'll never find it at that price, and and I don't want to have to hear you complain about trying to find another one.
And trying to buy it, yeah. Holy cow. I would keep that thing stored forever.
Oh yeah, I'm currently on the hunt for a box, and I found one on eBay, but the bottom is so chewed up, it looks like a dog got to it, but part of me is still like, it's still the box.
Yeah, you don't need the box.
You don't see the bottom of it.
You don't need the box.
We'll see.
I will tell you, I'm not a box collector by any means.
Okay.
Especially on the vintage stuff. I will keep some stuff in the box and it's usually when I can get maybe two and take one out. But y'all can pay, out the wazoo for boxes all you want. I'm not going back and collecting anything, that I have that for the box. But,
right.
That's but that brings big bucks when you have the box and you're trying to sell everything and it's complete.
Yeah.
So I understand the reasoning behind it, but I'm just not a box collector.
I get it. Those Kenner boxes, though, I mean, we could just do a show on just Kenner box art. Oh my gosh, we
Very
really could.
Very true. Well, that's a good pick. I never had any of the real Ghostbusters line. Right. It could have been just because I was into everything else, and I didn't watch a lot of the cartoon as a kid, although I loved the movies. And I think the first one was actually I've been dying to find out and confirm this if it was the first one I saw in the movie theater. Because I remember having
the second one,
the first one,
the first one, okay,
in '84. But I'm pretty sure it was because I had a lot of merch that year and around Christmas time. So I think I went and saw it. But anyway, I love just take the toys to the, whatever, put them to the side. I love the all the other merch that kind of came with it. That toy line, that little projector.
Oh, the ghost projector, yes.
Oh my gosh. I could watch those commercials all day long for the real Ghostbusters. Because the kids are doing all the motions, even with the granny and
oh my gosh,
the slime is coming in, and then they're in like they're camping out or something. I think yes! The projector commercial. Oh my gosh, those are great. Those are great, and I love those.
Do you remember? Because honestly, as we're going, did you have a toy liquidator around you? Or it was like a discounted toy show or toy store?
No, I the only thing we had was Ames and Kmart.
Okay. So I will say, because as we're talking, there was a discount toy store that, still had stuff that was maybe like, maybe 3-4 years, just they weren't able to get rid of it. And I actually got the Ghost Trap in, I'd say, probably 90, 91, 92, somewhere around that, where, it was Ghostbusters just wasn't cool anymore. But I got one brand new in the box at that discount toy store. I got no clue where it ended up, but I remember getting it. Now, here's the thing. Do you remember the Ghostbuster commercial where the kids are playing and they somehow... Man, Kenner, you guys are a-holes because you always got our expectations so high. But they actually, you would squirt them and like slime would appear on their shirts. But they were in the Statue of Liberty in that commercial.
No, I don't remember.
Oh, then that probably was a little later.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that would be great. I got to search that one on YouTube.
Oh gosh, I can remember that. You know what? I'm kind of remembering watching a WWF Hasbro commercial right after that. So you know what? Yeah, it might have been a little later. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, gosh, this is going to be a long show. So
it is. It's okay.
It's okay. It is all right. Great pick.
Our wives couldn't be happier.
Great pick. No, I actually have. I think I have one of the Filmation Ghostbusters figures. It's.
Do you have Primeval?
No, he's got something in the back where you move like a wheel and it does a little like spark in his chest. I think it's real Filmation Ghostbusters.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. It's like, is he kind of a bony kind of guy?
No, he's kind of like robed, but I don't know. It's laying around somewhere.
That might be Primeval.
I don't think it's Primeval. I don't think so. It might be a different line too. It might have been because there was like, what was it? Inhumanoids and all those.
It could have been in Inhumanoid.
That were kind of. Anyway, great pick. Number 5 for me. You know what? I'm going to do something I haven't done yet. I'm going to make a switch because I had 2 that were kind of teetering at the number 5. And I'm going to put the GoBots at number 5.
Ooh! Yeah. Is that Psycho?
This is no. Well, these I picked up actually at RetroCon. I think last year. These are the power. They had the power suits, and you could put the GoBots figures in the power suits and create like a huge robot.
Oh, wow.
You had 2 for the arms, 2 for the legs. I think there might have been 1 in the middle too, or maybe that one was just the. It was like a spaceship and then it was like a robot too. But I had several of these as a kid. This was one of my favorites. This is Fightor. That yes, like a Fightor jet.
Yes.
Now, for me, I am a GoBots apologist. I was in love with Hot Wheels, and I loved that size as a kid. So the GoBots just fit naturally into all of my Hot Wheels and stuff that I had as a kid. So that's kind of why I preferred GoBots toys over Transformers. And they were cheaper too. So, you know, when you go into the store and you're begging the parents to buy you something, they're, you know, more than likely going to buy you a Leader One versus a Megatron, you know.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Just because of the price point. So I collected several as a kid. I did have Psycho, Leader One, kind of the main ones, Scooter, Turbo, and then I had the train. I think his name is Loco, and Fightor, the helicopter. I think he was Coptor or something.
Copter, yep.
Yeah, it was. I don't know, maybe the same person that named all the Masters of the Universe. You know,
I wouldn't be surprised.
But it was Tonka. Tonka put them out. But I love the GoBot. I had the huge. I wish I still had it. I sold it on eBay a few years ago just because I needed some money. I had the command center for the GoBots, which was that kind of. It looked like an elongated AT-AT, you know, from Star Wars. And you could flip it around, and inside it had like 3 levels. There was like an elevator in the middle, and there was a jail, and there was different little areas that you could prop them up. And the eyes lit up, and you could hit the button on the back, and it would go bzz, bzz, and
that's
it would flash red. And the legs folded in and had wheels, so you could push it along, you know, like on a hard surface, or you could, you know, bring it up to the legs and kind of try to walk it with that. Loved the GoBots. Loved them to the point where I had way more than Transformers. And I watched the show. I watched probably more Transformers than I did GoBots as far as the animated shows, because I think GoBots was the Saturday morning show and Transformers was syndicated in the afternoons. So it was on a lot more too.
Right.
But I've only been able to keep one Transformer from when I was a kid, and that's Perceptor, the microscope.
Beautiful.
I don't have the accessories for him because I think he came with a gun that shot a missile. But,
yeah, but you have his telescope, so that
I got the telescope,
matters,
and he can get back down to a microscope here if I wanted him to.
Looks like great shape too.
Yeah, this was left over from the child. I remember having the Insecticons.
Oh, okay.
I really can't think of many more that I had as far as the Transformers go. I might have had a couple Autobots, but it was mainly all the GoBots because I loved the Hot Wheels and the Matchbox cars. So that's going to be my number 5 pick, and I'll tell you what it got bumped out here when we get to it. But again, I collected a lot as a kid. I've gone back. I found some like at RetroCon that I've gone back and tried to collect the ones that I remember having. And then I might try to go out and build this, the power suit robot. I can't remember what the name is because I never had that. I had a friend, me and Wyatt had a mutual friend that his dad was like a chiropractor and he was rich out the wazoo. And he had a lot of stuff that we wanted, and we got to go over to his house and play and share. So that was a real treat. But I remember him having the GoBots connected, robot. It was kind of like Devastator, but you could insert different GoBots into the suits. And they did integrate it into the animated series, if I do remember correctly. But anyway, so I'm choosing GoBots as my number 5. What are your thoughts?
I was going to say the only thing I would have done different is they never made a General Newcastle figure. Can I gotta tell you a story, and I love
Go
this
ahead.
choice because it's so there's not a lot of people that I know that would take GoBots over Transformers, so I'm loving this choice. About maybe 13, 14, yeah, I'd say that's the right time frame. My friend and I used to go to this this toy show up in right outside DC, and he found was it the Rock Lords movie, and he went
Yeah.
back and he found the old cartoon, and he tried to start a site like dedicated just to GoBots. So, but every once in a while, I would wake up and there would always be a General Newcastle quote on my voicemail because he thought it would be funny at like 3 a.m. and just kind of watch the cartoon. And Ryan, if you're listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he would just send me he would leave a voicemail of General Newcastle, or he would like email it to me, and he wouldn't tell me what it was, and I was just like, man. So honestly, I feel like a lot of people are kind of turning around on GoBots, and I think that a lot more people are just like, you know what, it was a nice alternative,
Yeah, and Transformers eventually got into that size with their. I think they called them microbots. I could be wrong, but they finally put some out probably in the mid to later '80s to kind of compete. I think. I do remember having the Transformer that was the tank that had the freaking cannon shooting out of his chest. I can't remember the name of that one. It was kind of a weird transformation, but I did have some of those smaller ones eventually that were quote unquote Transformers versus GoBots. So,
nice.
But it was all GoBots, man. That's just how it worked. And I remember having there's always knockoffs in the store. You go in like the dollar store and stuff.
Oh sure.
I remember having knockoff GoBots, like a dump truck.
Oh my gosh.
That barely kind of transformed, and his arms kind of came out, and he had this. It was like a pullback car, and you could put the little motor with the pullback while he was a robot, pull it back, and he would go shooting off. And it was a total knockoff on GoBots, but I loved him so much. I'm buying the knockoff stuff, man.
I love it. I love it.
All right. Well, what is number 4 for you?
Number 4 is one that I may have had like one as a kid, and I collected it more as I got older. And I'll actually tell you the story on how that started. It was I remember what year it was. It was 1996. I was in in my local library. I always have a story. This is always amazing. I was in the local library, and there was a book called Greenberg's Guide to Superhero Toys. Did you ever see this? It was a black hardcover book, and on the cover was a image of a Superpowers Batman and a Secret Wars Spider-Man arm wrestling, and it had all the figures behind them kind of like cheering it on. And I think it was done in about 1990, 91.
Okay.
So I just happened to pick it up because I actually, as I'm remembering it, I think the librarian was like checking it back in or like putting it away or something. And it just grabbed my attention because obviously I've always been a huge comic book fan. So I saw this, but I was like, hey, wait a minute. What is this? So I start flipping through it, and I'm like, these toys were made? And I'm like, holy cow. So long story short, I still to this day have a huge love affair with the Superpowers line from 1984 to 1986.
Gotcha.
Oh, just the best superhero figure sculpts at that scale, at that time. I mean, you had all your superheroes that you loved. And some great vehicles. I mean, those obviously the Batmobile. If you grew up loving the 1966 series, that was a Batmobile you wanted to have.
Three words. Hall of Justice.
Oh, you mean this right here?
Yes, there you go.
Yep, Hall of Justice. A lot of people rag on that playset because again, I'm going to go back to my buddy Ryan. He actually said that it looked like a giant shoebox that was just painted yellow. And like as you look at it, you're like, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
Though it's better than that big hunk of crap from that Secret Wars line. Funny you should mention the Hall of Justice. I have a story that could either terrify you or just look at me and go like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Lay it on me.
Like I said, I got into buying and selling around that time, and I was always buying and selling for more superpowers and even GI Joes and Hasbro's at that time, and this was like '96. And one of my big grails was a Hall of Justice. This is not the one that I ended up finding, but it took me about 8 months or so to find it. So I'm calling around to a couple of collectors, and I'm just that I became friends with, which is weird because I was 13 and they were like in their 40s. But I had known some of them from like comic shows and stores and all, and they always said if you ever need us to hunt down something. And I called one of them and I was like, hey, I'm still looking for this Hall of Justice. Can you help me find one? And he was like, hey, you know what? I think I actually saw one when I was at an antique mall. And I was like, really? Where's this antique mall? And he gives me the directions. Blah, 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 blah. We get to the antique mall. It's me and my mom. And it turns out that the Hall of Justice he saw was still in the box.
Oh, wow.
On a gigantic shelf. And I'm looking at it and I am just amazed. I'm like, wow, there it is. And my mom is like, all right, I'm going to loan you the money, but you have to pay me back every single week. And I'm like, all right, done. Do you want to know how much a mint in box Hall of Justice cost me?
I don't even want to guess. I have
$100
no idea.
In 1997.
Wow.
Okay. Do you know where I'm going with this story when I say that it's going to horrify you?
You had to sell it for much less than that
Nope.
or something?
Well, that too, but I opened it. I got it at home. I opened it, I put it together, and I displayed it on my shelf like a mother. I'm not going to say that word, but I had no shame. I loved that box. I kept that box with it for years and years. That was one of my all-time favorite play sets. I would still put it up there with the, the Firehouse and the Technodrome. I'm sorry, not the Technodrome, the Terrordrome.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful box. It showed the superheroes in front of it, the Hall of Justice. I think it even showed Wonder Woman's invisible plane, which they didn't make. But I love that line. I love everything about it. I actually have a very few of the superpowers left.
Okay.
The one I have kept the most is, of course, the Clark Kent. Which again, I'm going to go back to my buddy Ryan because he was a huge part of me growing up because he helped kind of encourage my comic book and toy geek stuff. We were at a comic book store that was closing, and they were having a half off sale. So my friend Ryan knew I had always been looking for this, and I didn't get this until 2007. So you figure 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, I think I got this. He got this for me for like $10, and it's in like just perfect shape.
Nice.
And
nice.
I just the fact that they have the little action features. I don't exactly know what Clark is doing here. He's just like rabble rousing or something. I don't know.
He's doing the Macarena. It looks like
he is doing the Macarena, which would make sense. Yeah, I believe that. But it's they're so simple, but they're so big, they're so bright. I love this line so much, and it's just to not list it on my on this list would just be a gigantic travesty. So,
gotcha.
What are your thoughts on the superpowers line?
Oh, it is great. I'll back you up 100% on adding it to the list. the card backs on those too. I love the artwork on those. The stars and the blue and the yellow. Very, very cool. It's weird because I never had a superpowers figure growing up, and my superhero. I never collected comics. Those missed me until just even a few years ago was when I started going back and getting some comics. But the only thing I watched was the '66 Batman and reruns, and then the Superman movies with Christopher Reeve, and then of course when '89 hit, the Batman.
Sure.
So I never, the movies. What came out, I think, starting in 1980 for Superman, and then
78.
a little bit earlier than the 80s. But I remember, watching the '66 Batman in the afternoons after school.
Same.
But obviously there was no toys that were out at that time, based on that. If there had been, I might have been picking those up, but the superpowers line just never connected with me. But if I went back, I would go try to get a Batmobile, Batman and Robin mainly.
Yep.
And I know that would cost me a pretty penny if I wanted a decent one.
Pretty much. Yeah.
'Cause I do have a pretty large collection of Batman, I'll say, memorabilia. I've actually taken over a corner of my wife's china cabinet with Batman stuff.
You got the china cabinet? Jeez, you got lucky. Woo.
It's been growing, and I think she's been about ready to just, take a cardboard box and take her hand and just into the cardboard box. If I'm not careful. But
I hope Erin is not listening right now. Because you're giving her ideas. I'm sure you're just giving her ideas.
Yeah. But anyway, I can appreciate the pick. It was just for some reason, like I said, not in the comics and only getting the TV show and the movies. It just I never got to my playtime.
Oh, that's fair. So, yeah. No, I totally get that.
Great pick though.
Thank you.
Number 4, I have a feeling it might be coming up on your list. It was number 4 for me. That is, of course, Masters of the Universe. I collected a good bit as a kid. One that I just picked up recently was Many Faces. That was
one of the gun.
Yeah. If you're in the Nashville area, there's a store called The Great Escape, and it has the most reasonable prices you will ever find for some great vintage toys, comics, records, video games. I mean, it's got everything. I could spend a whole day in there and not hit everything I want to hit. But I think I picked this up for like $7 or $8 with the gun.
With his gun?
Yeah. So this is one of my favorites as a kid because you had the face that spun around, and those are some of my favorite episodes too from the show. But I was big into He-Man pretty much right from the start. Had a lot of the figures. I had He-Man. I remember the battle armor. I had a couple of those figures where you hit hit his chest and it spun. Ram Man, Trapjaw, Skeletor, Stratos. I love Stratos for some reason, maybe because he could fly.
Fair.
Many Faces. I did have Castle Grayskull, like I mentioned. That was a Christmas gift one year. I'm not sure exactly which year that was. And I had the Point Dread that went up the top with the Talon Fighter. So I remember having those toys as a kid. And those were mostly given away by my mother when I was at college.
Of course.
And I would have loved to have kept, Point Dread and Castle Grayskull, the whole 9.
Oh yeah.
Did not have, that's where I kind of stopped. And I was always more of a good guy versus a bad guy collector, I guess you would say, with all of these toys, all the toy lines. So getting Castle Grayskull was awesome. The trap door, with this, you spin the throne, and the gate. I love the commercial. There's like there's a commercial where the dad is playing with the kids. I always love those commercials. I need to like do a post up on Rediscover the 80s on the dads in the commercials. But he's like knocking on the the drawbridge.
That's He-Man.
Yeah. It's great. Love that commercial. But that was a big part of my childhood. Those figures, Castle Grayskull. And I've gone back and collected a few figures here and there from the vintage line. I do like those new Mega Constructs figures that are the Lego size.
Yes.
I've got He-Man, Skeletor, Beastman. I think they have Tila and Faker too now.
Yes.
I haven't gotten those ones yet.
I've been going crazy looking for Faker.
But those are really cool. I like the Lego size, and those are a little bit larger than the Lego minifigures.
Right.
So I've collected some of those and some other kind of Masters of the Universe merchandise here and there. But I'm mainly putting this in my list because of what it meant to me as a kid and in my playtime then, more than I've gone back and collected now. So I know you've got plenty to say about Masters of the Universe, so we might want to wait on your take.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's my number 4. It was a very good line for me as a kid. Let's put it that way. And I had lots of friends who had the figures. I did have one friend that had Snake Mountain with
Snake Mountain's beautiful
with the with the microphone and everything. And I saw that actually at that Great Escape store when we first visited there a couple years ago. And I was like, oh, I should just get it just to have it. But I didn't have any figures really at the time to play in there. Or to even, display. But anyway, so I passed on that. But
was it a good price?
It was, it was like $20, I think. Something like that. I don't know if the thing worked or not, but it looked in pretty decent shape. And I can't remember what all accessories went with it besides the microphone, but anyway, it was good. That was a fun line. And I collected it more towards the beginning, the first couple waves versus the slime pit and all that kind of came later. And
Shut your mouth. You shut your mouth.
I don't know. I did have a fascination with Moss Man for a while, just because it was weird just to have the texture, and the skunk Stinkor, right?
Stinkor. Yep.
That I mean, who else is putting out a figure that smells like a skunk? I mean, come on. It was Masters of the Universe all the way with these awesome characters, but. All right, so that's my number 4. That's my number 4. What's number 3 for you? We got to keep moving here. We're going to be like 3 hours on this show.
So, no, that's fair. So I'm going to go with one that a lot of people identify me with, and it's one that I wanted as a kid, and I didn't get one. My mom thought it would just be too frightening. But as an adult, I have been I've always wanted one, and I've always been head over heels in love with it. And it is none other than My Pet Monster, which I love this thing so freaking much that I don't just have one. I have 2, apparently. I picked one up for $10 on Let Go, and about a month and a half ago, I drove an hour and a half out of my way to get a mint condition one. Nice. In Syracuse for $20.
Wow,
this little old lady had one. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. This little old lady was selling it, and she also sold me some Superpowers figures and a Black Spider-Man from the Secret Wars line. But she just had all this stuff in her basement. She's like, yeah, it's my son's, and he left it, and his kids don't want it, so I just figure I'd go on Craigslist, and I'm like, yep, snap it up right now.
And you're like hoping he doesn't pull up the driveway with you pulling out.
Oh my gosh, I was. And then she wanted outrageous prices for like a Ewok. She wanted like 25 or 30 for an Ewok, like the plush Ewok. She wanted like 25 for a bunch of Strawberry Shortcake figures, and it was like she has no idea what she has. She's selling me a mint condition My Pet Monster that could easily get me like $150, and you're trying to get, sell me Star Wars figures for like $10 each. What are you doing? It's incredible. But with My Pet Monster, and I've lost track of how many times I've talked about My Pet Monster over the years. He was a character that I loved as a kid because he just looked so big and like larger than life, and he's so freaking colorful and just captivates you. I mean, even as an adult, I am just amazed that a toy company was able to release this in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew a lot of kids that had one. I didn't have one. I really wanted one, but again, my mom thought it was a little too scary. But as an adult, I have just I got one. I got two, and I even got a My Pet Monster pet. I think this one's name is Wogster, and it's like a little puppet, I guess. But this is just such an impressive line, and it wasn't like the merchandising bonanza that, like, say, Masters of the Universe or even G.I. Joe, but it had its fan base. A lot of people grew up loving it. A lot of people still have theirs from when they were kids. Mm. And you'll see it on social media all the time. Just people are so in love with this thing, and it's easy to see why.
Yeah, it is. It is a very bright, colorful figure. I kind of picture you as a kid, like handcuffed to one of those, and it's like dragging behind you as you're just kind of strolling around the mall.
That would have happened. That would have happened had I had it. I would have taken it out in the mud. It would have gotten so filthy. Oh, it would have just been so worn out if I had one. I can guarantee it.
Now, I posed a question to you over on Twitter a little while ago. Did you know that My Pet Monster was included in the deal that Hasbro just did to get Power Rangers?
Yes, I did.
So that's like big news for you then, man. I mean, that could be like My Pet Monster comes out revival again, and right.
I tell you, it's funny because that when that got announced, I guess that was June, maybe.
Yeah,
was it June, May?
May or June, yeah.
Yeah, and I was taking a little social media break, but all of a sudden, as soon as I log back into Twitter, like maybe a day later, I was taking a Twitter break actually, and as soon as I log back onto Twitter, like maybe 2 or 3 days later, all mentions and messages, hey, Hasbro now owns My Pet Monster. And it's true, they do, but there's no guarantee that we're going to get it. But if anyone's going to do something with a My Pet Monster and make it, they're not going to make it what it was before, but if they can do something new and make it, reintroduce it to a new generation, I think that Hasbro is the right people to do it, and
yeah.
I hope that they just hit a home run. I hope that they, they make something for this the kids now that'll just gravitate towards it, and then, hey,
yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah, they need a Netflix series or something to support it, and then there comes the us Mask fans are sitting over here, been waiting years and years for them to do something.
Yes.
So we're hoping it's before they do a My Pet Monster series on Netflix, but they own a whole studio now over in Ireland that's doing all their animation. So I can see that happening. They're a toy company though, first and foremost, so they want to make toys.
True. And they're also branching out. Like they're all, they have their own app now. So it's funny you brought it up that they have that they have that animation studio. They could, they did that My Pet Monster cartoon. They did that insane My Pet Monster movie. So maybe I don't know. Maybe they could do a new cartoon. Maybe we could even get a release of that movie on DVD. That would be great.
Yeah.
That'd
be fun. That would be fun. Okay. Well, I never had a My Pet Monster as a kid. I always kind of grouped it in with like my buddy and kid sister for some reason. Like,
yes. So did I. I
don't. Was it the same company that did all of those? But
it wasn't the same company that did My Buddy and Kid Sister, but I mean, as a kid, if you had held up My Pet Monster or you held up My Buddy, come on. I thought My Buddy was kind of cool for like, a few minutes, and I wanted one because I was a kid and I wanted everything, but My Pet Monster never ever left my imagination and never left my mindset. And I will be the first to admit, I went on a podcast with my friend Stacy one time, and we were talking about My Pet Monster because we were talking about the live action series. I even said, I was like, if I never get one, I'm not going to lose any sleep. But then I started seeing more and more of my friends getting one, and my attitude kind of changed, and I was like, I kind of want one now. I kind of want one. So I got one, and literally it's like a giant, it's insane. And I would probably sell everything else before I consider selling a My Pet Monster.
Yeah. What year did those come out?
86. 86.
Okay.
Which a lot of people thought. Oh, you were 10. Okay, so yeah, okay, then that makes sense.
So that was still in this.
Now, would you have been too old for one?
I don't know, because I remember having quite a few plush and stuff. I had the plush Alf, for goodness sake. So, and Alf came out in 85, 86,
84, 83, 84, 80. Oh, the doll, the Kaliko.
Well,
that was 86 too.
I had the one with the talk box too, so he said like stuff. So and I loved Alf, but maybe just because I didn't have that tie-in, but I still had a lot of plush and stuffed animal type, toys, sitting around. So I don't know, it's never connected with me.
I've always been very partial to stuffed animals. I still have my Burger King Alf.
I've got one somewhere. Yes. Very good.
And it's funny because my brother got the baseball one, and I got the rock star. I don't know if you can make that out, but my mom put my name on the back here so that me and my brother wouldn't fight over which one we had. He is ratty as hell, but you have does he have his little his hat and the glove?
Yes. Amazingly.
Nice. Very impressive.
That was one somehow. I don't know why I kept it, but I've got it.
Nice. And post that. I gotta see that.
They just announced a reboot coming. Yes. I can't believe it.
I'm so excited. All Alf to me is good Alf. So even Alf Tales, which we were talking about earlier on Twitter.
Oh, I love the cartoon show so much. I love the show too. So anyway,
sure.
All right, let's move along. Number 3 for me. I'm going outside of the action figure scope for a minute, and I'm going with Hot Wheels. I loved Hot Wheels so much as a kid, and I can include Matchbox in there too, but it was mainly Hot Wheels. The one of the most probably my holy grail right now, which is not really, I wouldn't call it a holy grail because it's not really rare, but I had the Stow and Go garage that had the ramp and car wash at the bottom, gas station at the bottom, and then you had the Fix-It shop up top, and you had the little garage doors you can open on top and bottom. And when you took a car and went all the way down the ramp, at the bottom, it would hit the little bell for the gas station.
Right.
I spent so many hours in my driveway, my dirt driveway, with Hot Wheels in that garage as a kid. I love what they did in the 80s too. They had some awesome track sets. They had, and what I've got here are some from the line, the Crack Ups, if you remember these, where they have the car and you hit the front or hit a side panel and it'll spin and it looks like it's smashed up. This one has it on the roof. You hit it and the car looks like it's dented up. I've got a few more that I've gone back and just bought on eBay. I think all but maybe one or two of my Hot Wheels are somewhere, probably in a junk pile somewhere. But oh my gosh, Hot Wheels and Matchbox. I had some that I played outside with that I could get dirty and hose off if I wanted to. And then I had some of the ones that were the nicer ones that had like rubber tires, I kept those inside. I never took those outside with the garage.
Those are a pain to clean.
Yeah. And then, the ones that opened the doors, they had the ones, I don't know if it was Hot Wheels or not, but they had the key cars.
Yes.
You put the key in the back and you could shoot it out.
I feel like those are Matchbox.
That could have been Matchbox. I had some of those. But oh my gosh. And again, being this at my number 3 pick, I've got to take into consideration how much I go out and still buy Hot Wheels cars today. And a lot of it has to do with I've got 2 sons, and we've collected Hot Wheels for years, but just in the last, maybe 5 years, that Hot Wheels has brought out those retro line.
Yes.
They've got the DeLorean, and they've got Kit and the Ecto-1, the A-Team vehicles. They've pretty much put out there every single property in the 80s. If they had a car featured on the show, a lot of the movies too, like the Karate Kid,
That's right.
vehicles.
Yeah, they did Mr. Miyagi's, didn't they?
They have done pretty much everything you can imagine. Magnum PI, Ferris Bueller. I got Biff's Ford. That's filled with crap. I do. I have that one. I've gone back and I do like those. I like that set. But I just like the ones that are themed as well. If you got on the Rediscover the 80s YouTube channel, here's a cheap plug. I did a border in my boys' room, and I took this trim at Home Depot. And a lot of people were doing this and scaling all of the cars you keep on the card. You scale them up, and you can just slide them down in this trim and display them on your wall. And you get the bubble with the car inside, but it blocks the card back. And I love going and collecting the themed ones. Like there was a whole Super Mario themed set that was like 8 cars, and it was just it's the normal Hot Wheels cars just with a painted on the side with the theme.
Yeah. I do know the ones you're talking about. Yep.
And the Monster Cereal cars. I've got those.
That's right. You sent me some of those.
I love getting some cars like that, and they've done a lot. Masters Universe, Scooby Doo, all of the superheroes, and I went ahead and did my border horizontally so I could see the card backs because I'm keeping them in the box or on the card,
right? And
I wanted to see the artwork that they put on the card backs. So go over to YouTube and see what I did there, but you can't do that with the retro cars. Those don't have the bubble goes all the way down to the bottom of the card, so you can't really stack them horizontally. But I've got a lot of those. I've got Ghostbusters themed. I got some from that set that they did, and this has all been within the last few years that they start putting these out. And of course, the ones that I collect most, that I probably have the most of, are Batmobiles.
Yep.
I've got so many Batmobiles. I've got a whole wall. One whole line is just Batmobiles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all types. It's, from the 89 style to the Tumbler and the Bat, from the Dark Knight, and even the newer one from the Justice League. If I see a Batmobile I don't have, and they put them in different colors now too, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just, but Hot Wheels they've just always been collectible because they're cheap, and even now they're only $1 a piece. It's a lot cheaper than going out and buying like a $12 or $15 figure.
Yep.
So, oh, gosh, I'm just been so into Hot Wheels and Matchbox since I was a kid. Probably will be I'll probably buy them when I'm like 60, for my grandkids. And oh, look, there's a new Batmobile. Let me get that one. When I'm like 60 years old. My wife is like, are you spending our grocery money on Batmobiles? Yes,
it's at the grocery store. Counts.
Yes. So, and I did go back now. Target, just in the last year, they put out a whole vintage line, and it's based on cars that they made 30 years ago. And they did do this the Stow and Go Garage. So that was like an instant buy. I had to have that, and now my daughter, who is almost 5, she will play Hot Wheels too with me. We'll get out that garage and play, and it's just been such a part of my life over the years that even Hot Wheels have been around for a lot earlier than the 80s, and they'll be here decades from now.
Sure.
So it extends beyond the 80s, but some of the unique things that they did with the crack ups and some of the other sets that they released in the 80s. The one that my friend had was the Cobra. What's it called? Cobra. The Cobra stunt set or something. But it was like the track itself was the snake, and I think it did a loop, and it came out the mouth of the snake, and the tongue kind of shot out and back, as the car went through it. There's some really unique sets that they put out. But what's your take on Hot Wheels and Matchbox? Was it part of your childhood?
I don't know any kid that didn't like playing with cars. But they weren't the biggest priority. I have a few, like you sent me the Monster cereal ones.
There you go.
I have the Count Chocula. You sent me a silver, like, chromed out Batmobile too.
Okay.
So, but there's just something very about a Hot Wheels or a Matchbox. It just screams your childhood.
Yeah. And it's very, very transcendent. I mean, because it's over the generations. My dad's a huge car buff, and I'm sure he had some when he was a kid.
Oh, sure.
So it's just one of those things that boys especially will gravitate towards when they're younger, and curious about cars. And there's just so many they put now in each new wave that they put out, and then they do like mystery cars like they do with everything else now too.
Right. Yeah.
So
I've seen those.
They still are a huge commodity.
I would agree. Yeah.
All right. Let's move along. We're finally halfway, or a little more than halfway. What's your number 2 pick?
So this was kind of hard for me. I had to pick one. Only one can really be a number 1.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm ready for your number 2.
Okay. There are 2 toy lines that more than anything have just had the biggest influence on me. As a kid, as an adult, even as a teen, I would go and collect both of these. And you guys probably already know what the number 1 is going to be. G.I. Joe is my number 2. And there we go. You knew exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah. This I got from Chad, actually. And I've had it on my desk for a while at work.
And the battery still plays.
Yep.
That's the original battery?
I don't know if it's the one that was in there when you gave it to me, so it's still cranking out the theme.
That thing
like
is
nobody's
like
business.
that battery is 11 years old. That's amazing to me. Because I got that in 07, yeah. So
well, I'll just quickly say G.I. Joe is my number 2 as well. So we can talk about it together.
Oh, perfect. I got to tell you, G.I. Joe was huge in my house. The cartoon, the toys, not so much the comics. But the toys, oh my gosh. We had my brother and I both. My brother's 8 years older than me. So anything that him and his hillbilly goofball friends didn't go out and shoot with BB guns, I inherited. And that just G.I. Joe was the perfect line that, like I said earlier, you could go outside and play in the snow. You could play it through every season. You could take them out in the dirt. You could get them messy. You could get them, you'd lose their pieces. If you dared open them to in your mom's car, or you took them outside or whatever. It just, there were all these characters. The play sets were amazing. I mean, Terrordrome is my number 1 play set of all time, and I'm sure I'll waver back and forth on that when we get to my number 1. But just to be a kid and have these, I appreciated the military aspect because my father was a Green Beret, and so obviously like characters like Flint and Falcon were my favorites. But also being a fan of wrestling and comic books. I mean, I had Sergeant Slaughter, I had Serpentor. You and I and Sean Robert actually did a discussion on my podcast about G.I. Joe the movie. There were so many aspects about G.I. Joe that it just, your imagination went crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember I wanted a Cobra base. Or no, not a Cobra base. I wanted that. Do you remember the mobile command center that you would like fold out?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't get it as a kid. I found one at a thrift store for like $5. But and also I guess the thrift store guys didn't really know what was in there because there were G.I. Joes in there too. So I got some freebies.
Nice.
That thrift store has since closed down, but they were all idiots because they never checked the stuff. But G.I. Joe had such a strong grip on me that if I wanted a vehicle and I didn't get it, I could take cardboard. I could take, my dad worked with wood a lot, so I could just build things. I remember I wanted the mobile command center I wanted, but I didn't get. And here's how ridiculous as a child I was. I took an old blanket and I made my own mobile command center on my mom's couch.
Nice.
And there's not a lot of toy lines you can just do that with. I mean, the size, like I said, the characters, they lent to your low light. Sorry. Light. Now that's not the Slaughter Marauder one, right?
No, this one would be the Slaughter Marauder one.
Oh, look at that paint job. Oh wait, is that the new one or the original?
No, these are the vintage ones.
Okay, good. I do love
the Marauder one is a little well loved. We'll put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah, he couldn't hitchhike if he wanted to because he's missing his thumb.
But it wouldn't be a G.I. Joe figure without. I actually, one of the very few figures that I have saved since I was a kid. I have a fun story, and then I really want to hear yours. Okay. Because honestly, we could do a show on just G.I. Joe. When I was a kid, my father, I lost my father when I was 6. So honestly, anything that he and I spent a lot of time with, I gravitated towards even as I got older, And my father got me the Destro vehicle. I think it was called the Despoiler. They came with like a gold Destro head.
Okay.
And it's this one right here, right? Now, there's a story behind this here.
Yeah, the Grenader Destro.
Yes, the Iron Grenader. I never know.
Whatever you call it. Yeah.
So this has always been my favorite Destro. When I think of Destro, this is what I think of. I lost this in probably the 90s or so, and I have it written down here. Okay, this was Yeah, okay. I lost this in probably the 90s. I even when I was this is going to sound ridiculous, and this is not going to be surprising to anyone, but even when I was a teenager, I was collecting these. I was still playing with them. Anything that could get my imagination going and just kind of help me, focus through a lot that I was going through. I lost Destro out in the backyard. And it always bothered me because this was one of my favorites. And obviously, like I said, my dad gave it to me. And I have it written down here. In 2004, I'm sitting on the internet one morning. It's a Saturday morning. My mom went out to go do yard work. I'm sitting on the computer. I'm probably doing something stupid like a message board or whatever. She comes in and she's like, Chad, do you know what this is? And I'm like, I don't want to be bothered. So I look over and she is holding this in her hands. And I immediately recognize it. And I'm like, I start crying and I'm like, where did you find this? How did you find this? I lost this like 10 years ago or so.
Wow.
She was like, it was out near the bush. And my mom has always had like people doing her like her shrubs in the yard. So the fact that this didn't get chopped up is amazing to me. But ever since then, I have had it in a little case here, and he sits right on my shelf, wherever my shelves are. Nice. I have not let him out of my. It's like that. I guess like is it Citizen Kane where he misses his sled, and does he get it at the end? I never saw the movie, but like I guess Simpsons did a parody of it.
I've never seen it. Well,
as soon as I got it, I had like a little action figure case, and I put it in there. Never let it out of my sight. Like it. This, as far as like toys that I still have, and we'll get to another one when we get to my number one, but. G.I. Joe I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how much G.I. Joe means to me. I do have one more side story, and then I apologize.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I used to have a crippling fear of getting on planes. And our friend JD, JD, he did he still does podcasts every once in a while of Re-Geekery or whatever it's called. He calls me in 2009 and he was like, hey, guess what? And I'm like, what? You're going to Canada with me, and we're going to go to this G.I. Joe convention in, I think it was London or somewhere. I'm like, okay, I'll book my train as soon as I can. He's like, no, you're not getting on a train. And I'm like, I'm not driving up there. How the hell am I going to? And then it took me a second. I'm like, I am not getting on an effing plane. It was like from the A-Team.
I ain't going to get on no airplane, Hannibal.
I don't get on no airplane. I don't fly. JD convinced me to overcome my fear of flying so I can come to a G.I. Joe convention. Okay, and if that doesn't just tell you how much I love G.I. Joe, I don't know what else can.
That's great. That's a great story. Yeah, I mean, G.I. Joe has just always been around for me. G.I. Joe is there.
Absolutely.
I told a quick little story on our memory jogger about game shows. And when I was 8 years old, had my tonsils out. And when I woke up in the recovery and got into my room, I remember watching Press Your Luck, and my dad gave me the Cobra Eel figure, which I wish I still had. Most of my Joes were a casualty again of my mom, but I had several figures. I had the Havoc, which was the tank. It was kind of like a tank, but it had that huge windshield in the front. You could lay down two figures. You had Cross Country at the top that drove the thing. And then you could also put a Joe in the back, and it opened up, and then you had this like little hovercraft that came out.
So good.
Oh, I love that. I love that thing.
So good.
So I had that. And then the main thing that I had, I remember getting it would have been probably 83 for Christmas. I will reach over here.
Oh, this is what we've been waiting for.
The Sky Striker.
Oh,
this sound is one of my favorite sounds in the world. You know, the moving the wings out and back, dropping the landing gear.
Mm.
I still have the fins, but they are very weak and they won't stay on. I would really love to just somehow polish this up and put some new decals on it at least, because again, this is from my childhood and it got played with outside very much so. I still have the missiles too. They're not on this, and my canopy broke, but
okay.
I still have Ace, and I still have his helmet.
How do you still have his helmet?
This thing is so easy to take off the top, and I don't know how I still have it. But I've got the 2 seats inside, and I've got the missiles, and then the broken canopy. I don't have it. Came with a parachute actually, and you can tie the parachute to the to one of the seats so he could eject out, you know, and he could fly down and float down from the sky. That was obviously, I probably got tangled the first time I tried to do it and it got thrown away.
You know what my friends and I used to do is we used to take those plastic bags you get at the grocery store, and you wrap them around their shoulders, and you just kind of start throwing them off your back porch.
Yep, we did the same thing. The thing I loved about a lot of the Joe vehicles was there's panels you could remove and pretend you're like fixing them. I mean, even on the Sky Striker, you've got these little side panels that come off. I don't think there was anything from the bottom, but on the Havoc too, there was a whole housing you could take off underneath where the engine kind of was, and you could pretend you're working on it. But oh my gosh, I'm so grateful I still have this thing, and I don't get it out. I don't get it out enough to just kind of look it over and marvel at it. But that was the big one that I got, I think in '83 for Christmas. And I did take it outside and play with it, but I did try to keep it at bay too, so I didn't get too ruined. But there has been some casualties along the way. That, you know, the little panels where the back wheels go up inside, those have kind of broken off, and I can't get those to get back on there. But I would love I need to figure out how to remove some of the old stickers, and I know there's probably resources out there.
Oh yeah, like reproductions,
get repro stickers to put on there. And then moving to now, as far as collecting Joes, I did go back because Lowlight was my favorite figure, my favorite character. He didn't come out until I think his first episode was that miniseries with Serpentor.
Yes, because he didn't get introduced until about 84, 85. I think.
Yeah, I think it was 85. So I remember watching that miniseries on after school, and I got the figure, and it's always been my favorite. So I've gone back and collected a lot of the lowlights. I have pretty much a lowlight collection. Gone back and got some of the Microforce that they did several years ago. And then I've got pretty much every single Creo set that they put out in the last few years. There's a couple that I'm missing. I think I'm missing the was it the Hydrofoil?
Terradrome?
Oh no, I have a Terradrome.
You got the $20 one, didn't you?
I got the one, right as they were on clearance. I snagged it. So I've got the Terradrome, I've got the battle platform, and pretty much every Joe vehicle. I think I'm missing that Cobra. I think it was Cobra, the boat, the hydro boat, or I can't remember.
The hydrofoil.
I think it's the hydrofoil. I'm missing that. I think I'm missing one of the Ninja Temples too. But I've got. I don't. And it's weird because G.I. Joe is the one that I've probably gone back and collected more of the like new merchandise of over the
Yep.
last like several years. The Creos, and I've gotten gone back and got the was it the 30th anniversary? So I've got the low light. I got the low light and the specialist tracker figure in that line.
Oh yes, that tracker was that was a pain in the butt when it first got released to find.
But and then, like I said, I haven't gone back. And it was just in the last few years I started collecting comics, and I didn't have any comics as a kid. The most comics that I've collected have been the original Marvel Real American Hero comics, and I've collected. I've got a whole long box of just G.I. Joe comics. So that's the one I've kind of gravitated towards. And it's just because there were so many characters, and there was a character for everybody. You could associate yourself with somebody in there, and I think that's what's so great about G.I. Joe. It was all of the storylines and the file cards that God, what's his name?
Larry Hama.
Larry Hama, yes, that he created was so good. So,
absolutely.
G.I. Joe will always be up there for me as especially the Real American Hero for the 80s.
Oh yeah, and those toys were indestructible too.
Oh, and I picked up over there on the I picked up the Triple T tank from the Creo line.
Oh, that's right.
It was a convention exclusive, and they put it in like this. It looks like a VHS box. It came with all the Marauders, and then the Triple T with Sergeant Slaughter. That one's, I love that one because I never had the Triple T or Sergeant Slaughter as a kid. But I don't know what it is about that little tank that
it's just so cool. It's just meant for one person.
Yeah,
it's
great. It's kind of like the Havoc too. The driver, cross country, he's just sitting up there. There's nothing to protect him or anything. He's just driving around on the top of this freaking vehicle. And the way with Slaughter, man, he just didn't care. And in the season 2 intro, he jumps off the thing and punches one of the dreadnoks right in the mouth. I mean, that's just totally Sergeant Slaughter. You know what I mean? So that vehicle and the way it's set up with him just, I'm here and this is like my tank throne. And I'm going to run you over with it. And if I get stuck, I'm going to jump off and put my boot in your butt.
I'm going to F you up so bad. I tell you what, if you were to ask me at gunpoint, Chad, who is your favorite G.I. Joe of all time? It's Slaughter. Because he was, just like you said, he was so bad. Yeah. I mean, he was so cool, and he was a wrestler, so that was even better for someone like me. I just have you met Slaughter?
No, have not.
Oh, he's the nicest person in the world. I got to show you this. This is Mark Bellomo's G.I. Joe guide, right?
I
have it signed by Sergeant Slaughter on the inside.
Nice.
When I got him to sign this in 2007, he had never seen it. I also have Larry Hama and Mark Bellomo themselves.
Nice. Very nice.
G.I. Joe is just, I love it so much.
All right. Well, let's get on to our number ones. I'm pretty sure I know what yours is. If people have followed me for a minute, they pretty much know what my number one is, but go ahead.
I wish I had the sound bite, but I'm just going to hold him up in front of the camera. It's obviously He-Man. Obviously He-Man and Masters of the Universe. I'm not going to do some snappy little intro for it. He-Man was the first toy line that I can remember my father and I bonding over. Like G.I. Joe was a big one, but He-Man, by the time I was adopted, my brother kind of had a few He-Man figures, but I just got full into this. Like this was a toy and a cartoon that I would watch every day. And the figures are just so incredible. They're they're insane. They're out of this world. And
Gwildor.
Gwildor, who I have had since 1987.
Nice.
Of all the figures I've gotten rid of in my day and in my life, Gwildor is one of the few that I've actually held on to.
Gotcha.
But He-Man has always just been something different. He's always the toy line, the cartoon has always stood out. I don't know how to put my love for this into words, but I definitely think that a lot of it has to do with the connection to my father. Um, you know, but I love everything about that He-Man universe.
Yeah.
The fact that the characters look like they're straight out of a horror movie, the fact that they were so inventive with the cartoon, and it was such a positive role model. And even when they brought on She-Ra, and I'm going to show something off if I can get it off the shelf properly. I actually have a mint on card She-Ra, the original.
Nice.
From my buddy Neil, traded me that for a Ghostbuster cereal box. He was like, "Hey, you want this?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." You sent that right over.
If you go to RetroCon this year, you can get that signed by the actress
Melanie Britt. Yeah, that's a plan. Yeah, that's being discussed. I'll tell you, I loved He-Man so much that when She-Ra came out and She-Ra had dolls, let's just call them what they are, they're dolls. I had no shame in playing with She-Ra dolls. I'll call them She-Ra figures, but they're really She-Ra dolls. I had no shame. I loved She-Ra because she was He-Man's sister. I love the movie. The movie is one of my all-time favorite movies of just in the history of movies.
Secret of the Sword?
No,
right?
the live action.
Oh, the live action one. Okay.
Love it. Love everything. Well, yeah, I love everything about it. As far as like the new adventures, I like the cartoon more. The 2002 series, though, that's my favorite of the entire He-Man universe, just because of how comic book and dark and just down and dirty those figures look. I love everything about He-Man, and it when you see them, they're larger than life. These muscular, just positive. They just want to make their planet of Eternia a safe place for everybody. It's essentially like not a Bizarro, but it's like an alternate, reality of Superman. These characters, I don't know how to truly put into words how much He-Man means to me. And in fact, I don't know if you can tell. I'm gonna have to. There it is. No, wait, that's my shoulder. It's kind of hard to tell. I'm sitting on. It's my dad made this out of a He-Man fabric for me when I was a kid. This is the one that he made for me. Still holding on to it, and in fact, it has the same He-Man that I've had since I was a kid on it. So
nice.
But yeah, I there's not enough great things I can say about He-Man.
Well, you did a pretty good job there.
Well, thank you.
It's funny. While I was collecting my number one choice, I actually, in a lot that I bought from eBay, got a battle ram. I had never had the battle ram as a kid, and that was just such a unique vehicle in itself. I still have it, but you know how you could take it apart, and that's what you always saw them flying around on was the front half of that thing. But that was just the craziness of the vehicle concepts and just the character concepts they had in Masters Universe. You've seen my Pinewood Derby collection, right? I
have. Yes.
Did you see what I did last year? Or this year, I should say.
Was it the was it the Aqua Sub?
I did the Attack Track.
Attack track. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
I did. Now I did the cartoon version of the attack track, the
Okay.
blue with the crazy, wheels, and I did red wheels on the derby car, and then I kind of
Uh-huh.
glued on these rubber pieces to make those crazy tracks, that it would do. It didn't work like it,
Right.
would have in the cartoon, but I loved that attack track, and it talked and it was just ridiculous,
It
but it
was.
was in a good way. Um, it's just stuff like that in the He-Man universe that is so great. I know you've got the affinity for the live action movie. I
Hmm.
do remember watching that in the movie theater,
I have a
and
good story about
I'm
that, but go ahead.
not, in it's so weird how they kind of integrated that into the Filmation animated series,
Yes.
because if you look at I've got the comic book adaptation of the movie, and
Hmm.
He-Man is his normal He-Man self. It's not Lindgren, it's not
Hmm.
his He-Man. But
That
they add in like the other characters like Wildor and the dude with the swords. What's his name?
Blade.
Blade. Yeah, they add
Hmm.
in those characters to the story in the comic book, but they kept it kind
Hmm.
of more cartoonish than anything. But
Yeah.
I never really uh, thought of it as a separate world when the movie came out, and they
Hmm.
added the new characters. I loved it,
I loved all the
and
new characters.
the
Loved
the
them.
fact that they had those like traveling shows and like malls and stuff.
Oh, I never got to go to the Power Tour.
I never did either, but the fact that those existed in it, that just tells you how big, He-Man was at the time, and She-Ra.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was huge, very huge, and still is huge today. They made a freaking figure out of the Prince Adam.
Oh,
Uh,
the meme, the one that's laughing.
yes, the
Honestly,
four non blondes. What's going on? I mean, oh my gosh, I can't believe they made that
my
figure this
gosh.
year.
I when that got announced, I was just like, all right, I'll save my thoughts because I don't want to ruin anyone's fun here. I'm just gonna be nice. I'm gonna be nice. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but the fact that they made that figure is
It's
like you
insane.
said, a testament to He-Man's popularity, not just in collectors, but with pop culture in general.
Yeah, I mean
You know,
it's insane.
I'll say this. Right now I'm doing the Motu month on my blog where I
Hmm.
do a lot of He-Man centric stuff. Um, it just got announced that Netflix is going to be showing it just got announced about an hour ago that Netflix is going to be airing a documentary on He-Man. A documentary, a full-length documentary from what I understand, detailing his history. So I certainly hope that they go. I'm a huge fan of the Toys That Made Us, and
Yeah,
that was I think the He-Man episode is still the best episode, and I might be biased, but whatever. But I'm assuming we're going to get more in depth into the eras of He-Man. At least I hope so.
yeah.
Um, I'm excited for it. I got to tell you this though. I do have a story about the Masters of the Universe movie. Um, I was and then I'll stop blabbing about He-Man. I was 4 years old. It was my birthday. My dad, again, it comes all back to my father.
Uh-huh.
This is like therapy for me. Um, he surprises me with a trip to go see the He-Man movie on my birthday. And I saw that movie, and I swear I can remember it bright as day being in that theater. I was
Uh-huh.
so into it. There were like maybe like, 5 or 6, 7 people in that theater. I can remember it. I was 4, but I bright as day.
That's
I
nice.
can remember just coming out and looking at that poster and loving every second of it to the point 30 years later, and this is not really something that I like to discuss, but I'll just bring it up since He-Man, since a lot of people know I did this. 30 years later, last year, I interviewed the director of the movie. We had a great conversation. I got to hear so much about the creative process. I couldn't believe it. Of course, I had to, remove it because the director got into some trouble. But the fact that I got to sit there and just hear these stories about this movie that meant so much to me and so many others, I'm sure, it just blew my mind. I mean, hopefully, maybe someday I'll post the interview, but I just can't tell you just how much seeing that movie at age 4 with my father, that is one of my most cherished memories in life,
Very cool.
and it's all about He-Man. So, all right,
Very cool.
I'm done. I think I know where you're going with your number one, and I want to hear it.
Very quickly, because I do want to ask you this, because since you chose that at number one, why have we not gotten another live action Master of the Universe movie? I mean, it's been in development hell for like ever, and I keep seeing. I mean, there's like Twitter feeds out there, and a new director. A new director seems to get assigned to it every year, and we're really moving forward with it this time, and then nothing. It just seems like it would be the perfect choice to bring back in a new, maybe even slight darker way, like the cartoon, the newer cartoon.
Right.
I don't know. Why do you think that is, or why? I mean, do you want to see another iteration of He-Man at this point?
Of course, I would. I would be first in line. I'll tell you this. I mean, there was a sequel planned. It was already scripted. It was actually revealed just a few months ago that the script was found. Nothing has been posted, and I don't think that we're going to be able to see it for a long time. The director, I actually got in contact. His name is Albert Payun. I got in contact with him, and he just said, I don't really want to post this just yet. So it could be a while. But from what I understand from the people who have read it, it was even more of an embarrassment to He-Man fans than that first movie was. I don't think they would have been too happy with this one. But the fact of the matter is, it's just timing. I mean, just a bad idea after bad idea from what I've understood. Just they can't get their timing right here.
Well, I mean, as much as it's Mattel, right? That does the. I mean, they've done pretty much every figure you can think of in that classics line, and even Grayskull and some of the sets. As much as they've kept it going, you would think that they would try to at least get something made. But I don't know.
The problem with the 2001 line was the cartoon was great. The toys were fantastic. Kids didn't have interest. It was all adults. I mean, that's why you're not seeing, the Super 7 He-Man figures in stores. Is kids aren't really as interested in He-Man as we are. So, I mean, you have a lot of generations introducing, you have a lot of parents and, even in some bizarre way, the grandparents introducing their kids to their grandkids to He-Man. But I mean, other than collectors, I mean, He-Man doesn't really speak to that. These past two generations.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult, and that's why I think Eclectic always said that they should go more like the Lord of the Rings route with the movie. And try to make it more of like a fantasy picture than trying to make some kind of just straight up action or whatever.
Oh yeah, but absolutely. And I don't agree a lot with Eclectic, but that is perfectly said, 100%.
All right, well, well done with your number one there, and my number one, of course, is Mask. I got into Mask pretty much as it came out in '85. For my birthday, it would have been my, I guess, 9th birthday that year. I got the Hurricane vehicle, which is the '57 Chevy, and I still have that original one in my collection. But there's my Thunderhawk. I loved Mask. Still, obviously, do. We have the fan site to prove it. But again, it's the smaller. They're smaller scale figures than they were, G.I. Joe. So it didn't necessarily integrate very well with G.I. Joe. There's, Matt Tracker, and there's Lowlight at, and you can see how much taller they are. But for some reason, it was still, just the changing of the vehicles, all the little gadgets and everything. This freaking thing has seat belts in here to strap them in. So, and each one of them had like a place to drop bombs and missiles and stuff. And I have the missiles. I just keep those separate. So when I do get these out and my boys play with them, we don't lose the accessories. But it was one that I had. I've got one little story around acquiring Boulder Hill. But I had Hurricane. I had all of the motorcycles. I had Condor that turns into the helicopter. I had Piranha, the purple bike with the sidecar that was the submarine. I had the Vampire bike that was the jet. I had a lot of the small stuff. I even had the freaking billboard that opens up and shoots the missiles. Billboard blast. So I had a lot of the smaller sets for Mask growing up. And then it was probably around 87 or 88. So a couple years after the toys had been released. And we were in a Hills department store in State College, Pennsylvania. And there was like 2 or 3 Boulder Hills on the shelf with the clearance price. I can't remember exactly what the price was, but it was like exactly like the story you were talking about before. Mm-hmm. I pretty much told Mom I would be her slave if she bought me Boulder Hill. Mowing the grass, doing the dishes, whatever needed to be done. And she bought it for me. And I had that thing. I had a twin bed that had drawers underneath, but they didn't go all the way back to cover the whole bed. So there was like this area below my bed that I could store stuff. And I kept that Boulder Hill hidden under my bed for years, away from my mother, but apparently not good enough because, again, it was one of the casualties of my college years. But I finally acquired Boulder Hill, and that thing is glorious. I just love Boulder Hill. The trapdoor with the jail, the gun on top of the mountain, the garage that spins around. It's a great play set. The freaking gas pumps that pop up that are guns and you can move around. Great set. And then, when Wyatt and I got really into essentially rediscovering the show, and then we wrote our own little movie script. From there, it was just I've got to go back and recollect. And at one point, probably about 5 years ago, I pretty much became a Mask toy dealer on eBay. I went through and I was buying lots and trying to put complete, sets together.
Right.
And then the doubles that I had that had at least the figure and the vehicle, I would sell back on eBay. And I pretty much funded my whole collection by doing that, buying in lots. I swear to God, it was probably like $700 or $800 that was spent, and I sold back to fund, buying the whole collection. I have, and you can go out on YouTube if you go to our Agents of Mask channel and view my collection, because I don't have anywhere to display it because it's so huge. I have every vehicle in the first 3 waves, and I have all but 2 in the last wave, 2 or 3 vehicles. And then again, like I said, we've been waiting years for Hasbro to give us some other stuff, because all we've gotten is that Specialist Tracker figure and the G.I. Joe, whatever it was, 30th anniversary line. 25th. And that's been about it over the last couple of years. We've gotten, some comic books last year when, those were okay. But we want some toys. We want some, exclusives or anything at this point. Give me a Matt Tracker Funko Pop, give me something, use the license to at least give us, Matt Tracker and Miles Mayhem. But I've tried to go back and collect pretty much everything I could that was vintage. I've got the board game. I've got all the U.S. comics. I've got several from the U.K. I haven't gone back and gotten like they had like a European line, and they had some like knockoffs in Argentina. I'm not that hardcore of a collector, but I do have pretty much all of the vehicles that matter, at least to me, and the figures and the all the accessories. So yeah, go check out that video if you want to see my entire collection. But that's been the property that's been my favorite. Was one of my favorites as a kid, and now as an adult collector, definitely my favorite. So Mask it is my number one, and you can see that was one of the.
There he is.
That was one of the fun moments in my life too, when in 2015, Wyatt and I were invited to RetroCon, and we got to be on a panel with our buddy Bill Ferris from MattTracker.com, and with Doug Stone, who voiced Matt Tracker and I think 6 or 7 of the other characters on the show, as kind of like mask experts, And we talked about basically like the 30th anniversary of the show and what it was to us, and Doug got to do all of his voices, and it was just a great time. And we were so grateful to be there and get the invitation to do something like that, and actually meet the voice actor. And we've interviewed several of the other actors too on our podcast. And I think we're up to episode 52 that we've reviewed out of 75.
Oh, wow, not bad.
So we've gone back and reviewed the series too. So it means so much to us, and it's kind of my my number one for as long as I live. As far as 80s properties and toys go, just such a great line. Did you happen to get any Mask toys as a kid, or was that little kind of past your time? I know you were kind of younger in the mid 80s when it came out.
Honestly, the truth is, I'm gonna say this. I don't have anything bad to say about it, but as a kid, I loved the vehicles. I loved the concept. I hated how tiny the figures were, because I knew with my luck I would lose them. But I will say this. Here's my question for you. Were you so back in about 96 or so, someone did a cartoon called Vortex, and it was kind of somewhat similar, but it was a little bit more updated and modern. It didn't really last long. Did you get into that?
No. Well, that was kind of my college years, but they used a lot of this. They used some of the same molds that they used in Mask for that toy line. And I'm trying to remember the whole story. I have done a write-up about it on our website. But there's another one too. I think it was called Atom, ATOM, that was kind of Mask-like in that it had the transforming vehicles, and in figures, and I think it was about that size, same size. So they've tried to reinvent it a couple times. Hasbro has, and or, well, I don't know if that would have still been Kenner at that time.
But I think it was one of the last Kenner lines. Now that I'm thinking about it,
I can't remember exactly when Hasbro took over, but it's been, I think it was 15. It's been 15, 20 years at least that they've had the license and done nothing. And finally, now we're getting this. At least it was announced that we're getting a live action film series with F. Gary Gray as the director. So I'm like,
which is great.
It's perfect. It's perfect. You get, if you want to do Fast and the Furious with crazy masked vehicles that can fly, I mean, gosh, who else would you get to do something like that?
It's perfect.
So I'm hoping it pulls through, and I'm really excited about the prospects of getting some, even if it's brand new type vehicles and not any of the the classic designs back in stores. But I will be the first one at the movie theater. I will see it on opening night, and I will probably be levitating off my chair by like 6 inches throughout the whole movie if it happens. Because I'm still like, oh, it's been so long. We've been, talking about Hasbro and they need to wake up. I hope it comes through. I really do, because I think it's going to be great on the silver screen. So
that would be incredible. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's very quickly kind of run through some honorable mentions, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay.
So what do you have? What was one you had that was kind of an honorable mention?
What I have as an honorable mention wasn't really a line. It was just a single figure. It was done by Matchbox in '89, and it was based off everyone's favorite child predator, I'll just say, because I don't know what people truly consider him. But it was the Talking Freddy from 1989 by Matchbox. And for a long time, that was my holy grail of in my Freddy Krueger collection.
And you got it in the box, man. Nice.
I got it in the box. The guy that sold it to me wanted it gone so quickly. He was just like, just give me $20 and it's yours. And I'm like, okay. Jeez, that's not even an argument. I took this home and I opened him up because he, this was, I got him back in about 2012 or so. It's funny because at the toy show I was at, I don't even remember, but one of my friends there, he knew how much I wanted this, and he just said, here's 20, you can pay me back later. And I'm like, yes. And I was just floating on air. The best part about this is he talks, but it's so ridiculous. I'll try and I'm taking him out. This is again blasphemy towards here. I'll make it quick.
It's a pull. Okay, yeah.
Yep. I don't know if you could hear that.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one.
Wow.
Goofy ass laugh. But yeah, this is the fact that this was made, and the fact that so many parents complained and had it removed from shelves is just it's such a wonderful piece.
Yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
One of the one that I kind of bumped for GoBots was Thundercats, because I did have several Thundercats as a kid, and that was great. The Lion-O was the one where you had the it was like the action, and then his eyes lit up with the little.
Oh yes, you had the light up one, huh?
It was like a little had a silver end on it. You stuck it in the back of the figure, if I do remember right, and his eyes lit up red. And you could put the sword up there and do that, little glowing red eyes like he would in there. But I had Lion-O, I had Panthro, and I had I think all of the mutants, the Monkey and Jackalman and Sly. And from one, I think it was Christmas or birthday one year, I got the Thundercats layer. I had the it was electronic, so it came with a mutant vehicle, and you could put your mutant on there, and it used like light beams you could shoot up at the castle, and if you hit it right below the cat's head, it would open the doors, and then if you use the cat's head to shoot back at the vehicle, and I think there was something on there that kind of blew it up, like fly off the vehicle for you to win. But it was great. It had a trap door. The claws could open on the castle, and you could get figures in and out from there. And again, that was one of those things that I got lost in the college years, but I would still love to have
the Great Depression
electronic cat slayer. But I haven't gone back to collect them though. I did. I never had the Thunder Tank. Or a mutual friend, he had the Thunder Tank, which I always thought it needed to be bigger because you only got one figure in the front and one in the back.
Yeah.
So you needed it needed to be like about double the size it was to get more figures in there. But I went when they rebooted the series
in 2012.
Yeah. I went and I bought a Thunder Tank on clearance just to say I had it. And what's weird is Snarf came with the Thunder Tank. Of all things favorite to put in there.
My favorite character.
That toy line was pretty cool. I did get a couple figures too, and it had those little pedestals that you could put their backs up against, and I think it was magnetic or something. And they would lift the sword and do different things. So that was pretty cool. But I haven't gone back to collect any of the vintage stuff. So that's why I decided I'll just put that as my first one out. For my honorable mentions. Anything else on your honorable mentions? You got any more on your honorable mentions?
I've mentioned the Batman Toy Biz line. Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I would say I would say the Batman Toy Biz line. Because from '89, because that was such a huge deal, and I think every kid on the planet at that time had a Batman with the extendable Batarang utility belt. I actually have Bob the Goon with me right now.
I've got one in the package on the card.
Oh, you have one?
I have a Bob on the card. That's the only one I have from that whole collection.
Let's be fair. That's the only one you need. The Kenner figures were perfect, but honestly, no other line in history has ever given us Bob the Goon. So that's the only one you need. I have the Batcave. I'm looking at the Batcave in the box in my closet. It's beautiful. It's so 1989, but it's just so big. That's the problem. It's big and bulky. But yeah, that would be my other honorable mention.
Okay.
I do have one more, and it would be sorry about that. It would be the WWF LJN line, but there's not enough time to do that.
Yeah, I did. I had some of those in the thumb wrestlers too. I did pick up a Big John Studd thumb wrestler the last time I was at RetroCon, just for the heck of it.
Yeah, sure.
Those were great. Those were great as well. A couple more for me.
And your older brother, flings a Iron Sheik or a King Kong Bundy at you.
A couple other honorable mentions for me. The A-Team. This 6-inch ones. I still have my my Murdoch from my childhood. He's lost an arm.
Oh no! My favorite A-Team character, by the way.
But last year when we went, and of course Dwight Schultz and Dirk Benedict were there, and we got to we did the cosplay, and we got to meet them, take some pictures, and I got Murdoch to sign my Funko Pop. I I went for it because they had the 4 6-inch figures from back in the day and all of their accessories, and I just bought it. I was like, I don't care. I'm here. It's the A team this year, and so I went back and bought. I had Murdoch and I had BA as a kid, and I had one of those die-cast vans, but they was smaller than the actual figure, so you could. It was enough where you could slide the door and shove them in there, but it was smaller in scale, so it wasn't a true like A-team van. And I don't think they ever released like an A-team van for those size figures, but I could be wrong. They do have I still want to get the G.I. Joe sized figures that they released.
Yes.
But that's definitely an honorable mention for me because I did have those. Yeah, I think you said it earlier, but I'll do mention Mad Balls because I love me some Mad Balls.
You do.
I had a few as a kid, and being the sports person that I was, my favorite is Screaming Mimi, the baseball. But I've gone back, I play the game, the mobile app, so I get a bunch of the mini ones too. Addictive. But I've got stickers and all kinds of stuff. I love the Mad Balls. I've collected the comic books. They did I think 4 issues. Wish they would have done more.
That comic was so good.
Oh, I love the artwork on it. But I love the Mad Balls. I'll throw out there the muscle figures. I love the muscle figures. The little, most of them were pink, and then they'd end up going to like red and blue and different colors.
Sure.
My friend had the ring, the wrestling ring, or the whatever they called it for the muscle figures, and you could stick 2 on each side, and it was kind of like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Right. You had like a little joystick, for lack of a better word, on one end that you could fight with them. I don't know what it was about them. They're just fun and different. It wasn't pure like wrestlers because they had like crazy characters in there too. But I love the muscle line. And then quickly two more.
Was a pretty good one.
Quickly 2 more. I'll mention the Rambo figures. I had. I was big into Rambo. I don't remember watching the cartoon a lot, oddly enough, but
I do.
It could have been just the kind of G.I. Joe soldier theme that I went for. Because I had Rambo. I had who was the main bad guy? Savage was the name of the organization. It might have been Colonel Savage. I can't remember.
It was like
I had him
something.
And then I had the helicopter that he drove, and it had the trigger in the back that could rotate the propellers, and it had missiles on the side. It was the most ridiculous helicopter ever created. The thing should have not have been able to fly, but it was Rambo, so there was missiles and guns everywhere. And I had some of the other like just gun toys that was released from that line. I had the M60, which you could remove the front half of the gun. It was like a dart gun, like those old orange, those clear orange darts with the suction cups on the end. You could remove that, and it was like an M16, but you had the trigger to do the dart, and then you also had a trigger that gave you the rat-tat-tat-tat-tat, sound. Oh, it was so great. I played so much with that thing outside. And then one that was kind of short. I don't think they did too many waves of these, but there are several different kinds. And I can't remember exactly which company released them. They were called Guts. And they had they had a set of like ninjas, and they had a set of like Green Berets, and then they had like underwater, and they had an astronaut team. But it was essentially like the old Green Army men, but they were painted and a lot more. It was more than just the plastic that you get with the the Green Army men, from the olden days. I had a couple sets of those, and I loved playing with those. Even with the G.I. Joes, they were smaller,
Right.
But they still had some like ones that would lay down like a sniper and several different poses. So those are really fun to play with. But yeah, so that's basically my honorable mentions. It's weird that we didn't mention Star Wars once. Star Wars was huge.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And for some reason, I never collected it.
Yeah.
Star Wars was one of the first movies I watched as a rental at the video store, and that would have been probably mid '80s when I watched that for the first time. So a lot of those waves were released a lot earlier than that, and I didn't connect with Star Wars until a little bit, like in the mid '80s. So I just never collected any of the figures.
My brother and I had all the figures, and we even had the Death Star. But honestly, as a toy line, I've always been a big Star Wars fan. I've always been a Star Wars collector. The action figures, though, if I was to really, it wouldn't have made my top 5 just because of everything else,
Yeah, well, and they were simpler.
But that's just me. That's just
right. When G.I. Joe came along, there was a lot more, posability and joints and everything to the figures, and those were more just the traditional. You could move the arms and legs, basically. I think 5 points of articulation if you count the head. So it was simpler, but they were still. Gosh, they sold a lot of those, and that was a great segment too in the documentary, The Toys That Made Us, on the Star Wars line. So anyway, we didn't mention Micro Machines. That was towards the late '80s. I never got into the smaller ones, but Hot Wheels was always that size I needed. And then the other one I just never had in my collection was the Turtles, and those were huge in the later part of the '80s. All the Turtles figures in the van.
There you are.
Sorry.
Okay.
You
were cutting out for a little while. I heard you say Turtles in the van. Yeah. Ninja Turtles was one that I wanted on the list, but everything else, I mean, I've always been a huge Turtles fan. I'm super excited for that new toy line and the cartoon, but honestly, priorities.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I think let's go ahead and wrap this toy line marathon. And it was fun, man. I loved hearing the stories, and that's what's great about these lists that we do, and we make them personal, and you get to hear some memories about why they are so meaningful to you. So appreciate you coming along, appreciate the stories, and wanting to do this podcast.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you very, very much.
Well, go out and find Chad Horror Movie Barbecue. That's bbq.com, and over there on the Twitter. And like I've said in the past, he's very active over there and posts some great stuff. And I'm looking forward to more on the Masters of the Universe this month on the blog. So thanks for being here. Make sure you connect with Chad. Make sure you connect with Chad, and we will see you next time on The Rankum.